Let's bring in our very own Jane McManus. You could read her all the time on ESPN.com, ESPNNewYork.com. Jane, with the things that have happened today, what's your take on this? I mean, what do you think the next step is for the NFL? I mean, is Roger Goodell in any sort of problems?
I don't know. I think you'd have to ask owners about that. They are the ones who employ Roger Goodell, and it's hard to know whether or not, they think he's doing a good job managing this crisis. I mean, I think outside looking in, it looks like the NFL really, botched this from the beginning to the end, and issued this year-long suspension or indefinite suspension to Ray Rice, not based on what actually happened in the elevator, but based on the release of a video, which seems, very reactionary, not proactive. And also, what kind of a job did they do on this investigation if they didn't seek out and get that video inside the elevator? Everybody knew that there was a video in there. This is Atlantic City. It is not a grain elevator in Iowa. It is a place where there are cameras everywhere. People should have, the NFL really should have done its due diligence on this, and I think it dropped the ball.
What's so interesting about this to me is how insensitive the NFL was from the very beginning. Because really, they only changed the policy, Jane, because of the public outcry. If there was no public outcry, he would have served his 2-game suspension, and that would be the suspension here on out. So was the NFL just more worried about football? Do the owners not care? I mean, why was this something that they just seemed so desensitized to from the very beginning?
That's a great question, and I think that's, you look at this as a league that had a situation with Jovan Belcher not very long ago where he murdered the mother of his child and then took his own life. It was tragic and it was awful, but it was also a time that the NFL should really have been sitting down and thinking, what is this about? What is this kind of violent act about? Do we need to have a more comprehensive way to address this? It certainly seems like, from the beginning of this, it just didn't have a very good understanding of what domestic violence was, what the dynamic behind it was. Janae Rice was put on the press conference podium along with her husband, where she apologized for her role in what happened that night, which is completely inappropriate and wasn't appropriate at the time. And, you certainly had this kind of circle the wagons mentality with the Ravens where they, embraced him from the moment of his arrest, even after the video came out. It was very much like we're sticking with him. They said he would be playing that year. You're exactly right. Every single step is the way, and they didn't seem to understand what the issue was about. Only when people were upset about the 2-game suspension did they implement a more full domestic violence policy, and then only when this video was released was Rice suspended for a much more meaningful amount of time.
Talking with Jane McManus of ESPNNewYork.com. Jane, what do you make of Janae Rice's Instagram statement today where she's essentially scolding the media for getting into their business?
I can't pretend to understand, where Janae Rice is right now or what she's feeling or how she's interpreting this, but I know that she has every right to feel exactly how she wants to feel about it. A lot of people speculated at the beginning that she might have been the instigator behind this night of violence, this assault, that somehow she was responsible for it. And then today, I think we have a lot of people who are blaming her for staying with Ray Rice, and I really think that she's the wrong person to blame in this. She did not throw the punch. She was the one who was knocked out, and I think it's very hard, probably, if I were to put myself in her shoes, to feel to wear that kind of title of victim in this. I would think she would want to have her own way of thinking about it, write her own narrative, and the dynamic, again, behind domestic violence, often women stay with the men who assault them, whether it's for love or out of obligation or because there are children or because of other reasons. It's a very complicated thing. It's why law enforcement doesn't like to deal very much with domestic violence issues because, it's hard to get women to press charges or men to press charges against, the people who assault them. I can't pretend to understand it. I'm not a domestic violence expert, but I do think that it's something that, people who look at this issue, people who work with this issue, it's something that they have a better grip on, and it's something that the NFL certainly should have been more aware of.
What I'm trying to figure out, Jane, is we have a situation going on in San Francisco with Ray McDonald, who's been accused of beating his girlfriend who's pregnant. And he played on Sunday. And there is really not that much of an outcry or story about it. So is it outrage over the act, or is it just outrage over what we saw?
Well, with McDonald, it is important for the facts in that case to be known. I think, the NFL does it. You don't know immediately when something like that happens what happened. And I think he does get due process, McDonald. I think he does get the benefit of the doubt. But if he is found to have done, what's alleged, I think they should come down on him and come down on him quickly. And the other thing is you do have the Greg Hardy situation also, the defensive end for Carolina Panthers, and he is playing this year after having been found guilty in a bench trial, which automatically in that jurisdiction gets advanced into a jury trial, which will start, I think it's scheduled for November 17th. But, he's now playing on a $13.1 million contract after, a bench judge said that he was guilty of his is the case where he threw his girlfriend down on a bed of guns or a futon with guns on it. Just another horrifying set of allegations. And he was also found, I was reading it today, he was also found, the judge said that she thought that he'd called 911 in an attempt to make it seem like he was the victim after committing that alleged act. So, again, another really horrifying case. When you think about it, another guy will be playing on Sunday.
But the problem with due process is it takes a long time for that process. So he could theoretically, or these individuals can play sometimes a season or two before we find out truly what had taken place. And can the NFL really afford to have a player like that play for them and then see him get convicted of that heinous crime down the road?
And, Jane, their worst nightmare has to be a guy like that going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl MVP, and then getting carted off to jail because that's when his case is adjudicated.
Yeah, that's true. Well, they do have this personal conduct policy, and under the personal conduct policy, they reserve the right to be able to discipline players who haven't been found guilty in a court of law. So something like that, if they wanted to look at the Greg Hardy case harder, they might be able to find that, just based on the bench trial, they could suspend him. But, again, I think they don't want to be in a position where they suspend somebody who's then found to not have done what he was alleged to have done. That's another situation you don't want to be into if you're the league. Because then, you're guilty of overreach, you're not a court of law, and you've taken away someone's livelihood.